The Galactic Council chamber floated in the void between stars, a massive station carved from a dead moon. Inside its crystalline halls, representatives from 300 species gathered under the pale light of distant nebulae. The air hummed with translators, processing thousands of languages into coherent discourse. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood alone at the human podium. Her dark eyes swept across the amphitheater, taking in the towering Kryn warriors with their forearms crossed in contempt, the gelatinous Vex diplomats bubbling with barely concealed disgust, and the elegant Cythery whose silver skin reflected nothing but cold calculation. High Chancellor Thex Nor of the Kryn Empire rose from his throne. His voice boomed through the chamber like thunder. The human species will comply with Galactic Law 7749. All military vessels will be decommissioned. All weapons research will cease. Earth and its colonies will accept Galactic Protectorate status. You have 72 hours to respond. Elena remained motionless. Behind her, the holographic display showed Earth spinning peacefully in space, blue and green and precious. Humanity's 12 colony worlds glowed like distant pearls on the star map. They were young worlds, barely established, vulnerable. You misunderstand our position, Elena said softly. Her voice carried through the chamber nonetheless. We came here to negotiate terms of partnership, not surrender. Laughter erupted from multiple sections. The Vex ambassador's translation device crackled. Partnership? Your species achieved faster-than-light travel only 40 years ago. You are children playing with weapons you don't understand. The Kryn Empire alone commands 17,000 systems. You control 13 worlds barely colonized. Elena's jaw tightened. Numbers aren't everything. No, Thex Nor agreed, his mandibles clicking with amusement. They are the only thing that matters in this galaxy. Power. Territory. Resources. You have none of these in sufficient quantity. Therefore you will submit or you will be made to submit. Those are your only choices. The Cythery representative glided forward, her movements hypnotic. Be reasonable, Ambassador. The Protectorate system ensures your survival. You will be defended, guided, allowed to grow under proper supervision. Your alternative is isolation and eventual conquest by less merciful species. We offer you peace. You offer slavery dressed in diplomatic language, Elena replied. We've seen what happens to Protectorate species. The Yalith people reduced to labor forces. The Corvin, their culture erased within 3 generations. The humanity refused to walk that path. Thexnor's eyes narrowed. Then you choose war? We choose sovereignty. Silence fell across the chamber. Species who had observed humanity with casual curiosity now regarded them with something approaching shock. No young species had ever refused Protectorate status. The alternative was unthinkable. You are 7 billion individuals spread across 13 worlds, the Vex ambassador said slowly. The Kryn Empire alone fields battle fleets that could glass every human world in a standard week. The Cythery collective commands technologies your scientists cannot even comprehend. The Vex Dominion has biological weapons that could sterilize your planets while leaving infrastructure intact. Together, the Council commands resources beyond your imagination. And you say no? Elena reached into her jacket and withdrew a small data chip. She placed it on the podium. This contains our formal response. You'll want to review it carefully. Thex Nor gestured, and the data flowed into the Council's central processor. Holographic text materialized in the air, translated instantly into every language present. The United Nations of Earth and Colonies hereby withdraws from all diplomatic negotiations with the Galactic Council. Furthermore, we declare the following territories as human quarantine zones, forbidden to all Galactic Council vessels. Sol System Alpha Centauri, Tau Ceti, Epsilon Eridani, and all systems within 10 light-years of established human colonies. Any incursion into these zones will be considered an act of war. We ask nothing from you. We offer nothing to you. Leave us alone and we will leave you alone. This is our final position. The chamber erupted in chaos. Species shouted in dozens of languages, their translators struggling to keep pace. The Kryn delegates roared with outrage. The Vex bubbled violently. Only the Cythery remained calm, their silver faces unreadable. This is insanity, Thex Nor bellowed. You cannot quarantine space. You cannot dictate terms to the Galactic Council. We have maintained order in this galaxy for 10,000 years. You are nothing. A statistical anomaly. A brief spark that will be extinguished. Elena gathered her papers. Then I suppose we have nothing more to discuss. I'll see myself out. Wait, the Cythery representative said. Her voice carried a note of genuine curiosity. What makes you think you can enforce these quarantine zones? Elena paused at the door. She looked back over her shoulder and for the first time she smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. I guess you'll find out. She walked away from the peace talks. Behind her, the galaxy began preparing for war, confident in their overwhelming superiority. None of them understood the mistake they were making. None of them knew what humans became when backed into a corner. None of them had studied Earth's history. The Kryn task force entered the Sol system 6 days later. 83 warships, each the size of a small city, emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Admiral Crixtal commanded from the flagship Eternal Dominion, his 4 arms manipulating holographic displays with practiced efficiency. "Scan for human military assets," he ordered. "Let's see what pitiful defense they've prepared." The sensor officer's mandibles clicked nervously. "Admiral, I'm detecting unusual readings throughout the system. Multiple gravitational anomalies. The signatures don't match any known ship configurations." Crixtal snorted. "Human ships. Primitive and poorly designed, no doubt. Proceed to Earth. We'll broadcast our demands when we achieve orbit. If they refuse again, we commence planetary bombardment. Standard intimidation protocol." The task force moved deeper into the system, passing Mars, then the asteroid belt. Earth grew larger on their view screens, that blue marble that had produced such inexplicably stubborn inhabitants. "Admiral," the sensor officer said, his voice rising. "The gravitational anomalies are moving. They're not stationary. They're surrounding us." Before Crixtal could respond, space itself seemed to tear open. Not the clean ripple of faster-than-light engines, but something else. Something wrong. 37 points around the Kryn formation simply unfolded, reality peeling back like paper. From these impossible wounds emerged vessels unlike anything in Galactic Council databases. They were sleek, angular, composed of materials that seemed to drink light rather than reflect it. No visible weapons ports. No obvious propulsion systems. Just predatory geometry hanging in the void. "Human vessels," the communications officer reported. "They're hailing us." On screen, Crixtal ordered, his confidence wavering. A human face appeared. Male, middle-aged, with gray eyes that held no warmth. "This is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. You have entered quarantine space. Turn back now. This is your only warning." Crixtal recovered his composure. "We outnumber you more than 2 to 1 human. And each of our warships has crushed entire planetary defense grids. You have no idea what you're facing." "Yes," Admiral Chen replied. "We do." The transmission ended. "Admiral," the sensor officer's voice cracked. "The human ships are generating energy signatures I've never seen. Power readings are... This can't be right. They're off the scale. Each ship is outputting more energy than our entire task force combined." Crixtal's primary heart began beating faster. "Impossible. They're children in space. They don't have the technology or the resources." The first human ship fired. It wasn't a missile or a plasma bolt or any weapon the Kryn recognized. It was a beam of compressed gravitational force, a spear of warped spacetime itself. It struck the valiant Conqueror, a heavy cruiser on the formation's left flank. The cruiser didn't explode. It folded. Reality crushed inward, compacting 300,000 tons of warship and crew into a sphere no larger than a basketball. The sphere spun briefly in the void before winking out of existence entirely, sucked into a gravity well that vanished as quickly as it formed. 1,700 Kryn warriors gone. Just gone. Evasive action. Crixtal roared. "Return fire. All weapons." The Kryn fleet scattered, their powerful engines sending them spinning in multiple directions. Missiles launched, plasma cannons blazed, particle beams lanced through space. The human ships dodged with impossible precision, their movements defying inertia, dancing through the barrage like ghosts. A second human ship fired. Then a third. 2 more Kryn vessels folded into nothingness. A fourth human weapon struck the merciless judgment, and the destroyer simply came apart at the molecular level, disintegrating into its component atoms in a silent flash. "They're targeting our capital ships," the tactical officer shouted. "They're systematically destroying our heaviest assets first." Crixtal's mind raced. This was wrong. This was impossible. Humanity was young, primitive, decades behind Galactic Council technology. How could they have weapons that operated on principles the Council hadn't even theorized? "Full retreat," he ordered. "Emergency faster-than-light jump. Get us out of this system." We need 30 seconds to charge the drives, the engineer reported. 28 seconds. 26. Another human ship fired. The beam struck the Eternal Dominion's aft section, and Crixtal felt the deck shudder beneath his feet. Alarms screamed through the ship. Hull breaches on 19 decks. Faster-than-light drive damaged. They were crippled. Around him, his task force was being torn apart. Not in a pitched battle but in a systematic execution. The human ships moved with perfect coordination, their weapons firing with devastating precision. They weren't fighting. They were exterminating. 40 Kryn warships gone in less than 5 minutes. Broadcast surrender, Crixtal gasped. Tell them we surrender. They're not responding to hails, the communications officer said. Admiral, I don't think they care. Another beam. Another ship folded into oblivion. The humans weren't accepting surrender. They were making a statement. Of the 83 ships that entered Sol system, only 12 escaped. They jumped to faster-than-light speed with damaged drives, leaving behind their dead and their pride. Admiral Crixtal sat in his command chair, all 4 arms trembling, staring at the tactical display that showed the human vessels returning to those impossible dimensional folds, vanishing from normal space as if they'd never existed. What are they? He whispered. His sensor officer, young and traumatized, could only shake his head. I don't know, Admiral. But they're not what we thought. They're not even close to what we thought. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of the Sol System massacre. High Chancellor Thex Nor stood before the assembled representatives, his posture no longer proud but rigid with barely controlled rage and, though he would never admit it, fear. 83 warships, he said, his voice echoing through the silent chamber. The pride of the Kryn Empire's Third Fleet. 40,000 warriors. Gone in 7 minutes. 12 ships escaped. 12. The holographic display showed footage from the survivors' recordings. Council members watched in stunned silence as human vessels phased into existence from nowhere, as their weapons violated understood physics, as Kryn warships were compressed into singularities or dissolved into atomic clouds. The Vex ambassador's gelatinous form rippled with agitation. This is impossible. Our intelligence reported human military technology at level 4 on the Council scale. Chemical propulsion, primitive nuclear weapons, basic energy shields. What we're seeing here is level 9 technology, possibly level 10. Technologies that most Council species don't possess. How did they advance so far so quickly? They didn't, said Ambassador Lyra of the Cythery. Her silver face reflected the carnage on the displays. They were always this advanced. They hid it from us. The chamber erupted in disbelief and outrage. Species shouted questions, accusations, demands for action. Thex Nor raised all 4 arms for silence. Impossible, a Corvin delegate protested. We monitored their development for 40 years. We watched them struggle with basic fusion reactors, saw them lose ships to equipment failures, observed their clumsy first colonies. No species can fake that level of incompetence. Unless, Lyra said softly, incompetence was exactly what they wanted us to see. She manipulated her control panel, and new images flooded the displays. I had my intelligence service review all interactions with humanity over the past 4 decades. Look at this. Every time a Council vessel approached human space, the humans demonstrated exactly the level of technology we expected to see. Ships with visible propulsion systems, slow response times, conventional weapons. But notice the patterns. Different human ships showed different capabilities, as if their entire fleet wasn't standardized. That's not how military forces work. That's how deception works. She highlighted a specific incident. 3 years ago, a Vex surveyor encountered a human colony ship. The ship was struggling with engine problems, limping along at sublight speeds. The Vex offered assistance, scanned their systems, reported primitive fusion drives and life support. But look at this energy signature the surveyor recorded and dismissed as background radiation. The data unfolded across the screens. That's not background radiation. That's a dimensional fold generator running on standby. That struggling colony ship had faster-than-light capability far beyond anything the Council possesses. They were pretending. Silence fell again, heavier this time. The implications were staggering. But why? The Vex ambassador demanded. Why hide their strength? They could have negotiated from a position of power. They could have joined the Council as equals or even superiors. Because they were studying us. Thex Nor realized, his voice hollow. The entire time they were studying us. Learning our capabilities, our tactics, our politics. They appeared weak to make us underestimate them, and we fell for it completely. Ambassador Lyra nodded. I had my scholars research human history. It's disturbing. They have a concept they call strategic deception. Entire philosophies of warfare built around appearing weak while preparing strength. Ancient human generals wrote treatises on it thousands of years ago. Appear weak when you are strong and strong when you are weak. They've been practicing this kind of warfare for their entire history. She brought up images of Earth. And consider their planet. One gravity. Harsh seasonal variations. Hundreds of separate ecosystems, many actively hostile to human life. Thousands of predator species. For millions of years, humans weren't the apex predators on their own world. They had to fight for that position against creatures with claws, fangs, venom, and strength far superior to their fragile bodies. So they developed tools, another delegate breathed. They developed strategy. They developed ruthlessness, Lyra corrected. Look at their history. Thousands of separate civilizations on one planet, each developing independently, each competing for resources. They spent 10,000 years in near-constant warfare against each other. They developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet by their early atomic age and somehow managed not to use them to extinction. They are survivors on a level we cannot comprehend. Thexnor slammed a fist against his throne. It doesn't matter. They are still one species. 13 worlds. 7 billion individuals. The Galactic Council commands trillions. We have technologies they haven't even dreamed of. We have resources beyond. Do we? Lyra interrupted. Do we really? Because we thought we understood their capabilities and we were catastrophically wrong. What else might we be wrong about? The Vex ambassador pulsed with determination. The Kryn attacked with a single task force. We need to mobilize the full might of the Council. Overwhelming force. Simultaneous strikes on all human colonies. We crush them before they can deploy whatever other weapons they're hiding. And if we're wrong again? Lyra asked. If they have more surprises waiting? If we send 10,000 ships and lose them all? Then we send 100,000, Thexnor growled. We outnumber them thousands to one. We've maintained galactic order for 10 millennia. We are not going to be intimidated by one young species, no matter how clever they think they are. The Galactic Council will not bow to humans. The vote was called. Species after species approved military action. Only the Sithari abstained. As the session ended and war was formally declared, Ambassador Lyra returned to her private chambers. She activated her quantum communicator and waited for the encryption to engage. This is Lyra. The Council has authorized full military response against humanity. Fleet marshalling will take approximately 23 days. I recommend you inform your government. The response came quickly, the voice unmistakably human. Acknowledged, Ambassador. Thank you for the warning. Your payment has been transferred to the usual accounts. Lyra terminated the connection. She walked to her viewport and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was preparing for the storm the Council was about to unleash. And despite her 1,000 years of experience, despite her species' vaunted strategic minds, Lyra could not shake a simple, terrifying certainty. The galaxy had no idea what it was about to face. The Galactic Council Armada gathered at the Nexus Point, a region of space equidistant from all major human colonies. 10,000 warships, drawn from 40 different species, representing the combined might of an entire galaxy. The display was meant to be overwhelming, crushing, the kind of force that made resistance unthinkable. Fleet Admiral Zewendar of the Sithari commanded from the Dreadnought Universal Order. Unlike his colleagues, he felt no confidence. Ambassador Lyra's intelligence reports had troubled him deeply. But orders were orders, and the Council had decided. All ships report ready, his tactical officer announced. We have confirmed locations of all 13 human colonies. Strike forces are positioned for simultaneous assault. The humans cannot defend all their worlds at once. Zewendar studied the holographic star map. Human space was tiny, a small cluster of systems on the galactic rim. The colonies were spread out, each vulnerable, each precious. Standard strategic doctrine said humanity would have to concentrate their forces to defend the most important targets, leaving others exposed. The Council would exploit that weakness. Begin the operation, Zewendar ordered. The Armada split into 13 strike groups, each composed of hundreds of ships. They jumped to faster-than-light speed simultaneously, reality rippling as thousands of drives activated in concert. In moments they would arrive at their targets. In hours this war would be over. The strike force targeting Alpha Centauri emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 800 ships, enough to overwhelm any conceivable defense. The planet New Beijing hung before them, humanity's oldest colony, home to 1 billion people. Scanning for human military assets, the sensor operator reported. I'm detecting nothing, Commander. No ships, no orbital platforms, no defensive installations. Commander Vexiel's gelatinous form pulsed with suspicion. That's impossible. They must be hiding like they did at Seoul. Full sensor sweep. Find them. But there was nothing to find. The colony was undefended. Its cities sprawled across the continents below, lights glowing, infrastructure intact. 1 billion human lives completely exposed. They abandoned them, Vexiel realized. They concentrated their forces elsewhere and left the colonies undefended. False. Broadcast surrender demands. If they comply, we can avoid. Space tour open. Not around the fleet. Around the planet. Dimensional rifts materialized in low orbit, dozens of them, and from these rifts emerged something that made Commander Vexiel's biology freeze in primal terror. They weren't ships. They were structures. Enormous, geometric constructs, each the size of a small moon, covered in what looked like ancient runes that glowed with impossible colors. What are those? The tactical officer whispered. The structures began to hum. The sound wasn't physical, didn't travel through vacuum, but every being in the Galactic Council fleet felt it nonetheless. It vibrated in their bones, their organs, their minds. Energy built between the structures, arcs of power that looked like lightning but behaved like something far more fundamental. The planet below began to glow. It's a shield, the sensor operator gasped. But the energy readings are. Commander, that's not shield technology. That's something else. Those structures are generating a field that's rewriting local spacetime. They're making the planet exist in a slightly different dimensional frequency. Nothing can touch it. Before Vexiel could respond, the human structures stopped humming. The energy didn't dissipate. It redirected. Toward the fleet. 800 ships. Experienced crews. Weapons charged and ready. None of it mattered. The dimensional pulse washed over them like a wave. Ships didn't explode. They phased. One moment they existed in normal space. The next they were somewhere else. Some vanished completely. Others reappeared as twisted, impossible shapes, their geometry folded in directions that shouldn't exist. Crews screamed in languages both known and unknown as their bodies experienced realities never meant for biological life. Commander Vexiel's last coherent thought was a question. How long had the humans been planning this? Identical scenes played out at 12 other human colonies. 12 more strike forces encountered 12 more sets of reality-warping structures. The Galactic Council lost 9,400 ships in less than 15 minutes. At the nexus point, Fleet Admiral Ziyundar watched his tactical display as red icons blinked out by the hundreds. His bridge crew sat in stunned silence. The mathematical reality was inescapable. The Council had just lost 94% of its assault force. Survivors? He asked quietly. Minimal, the communications officer reported. We're receiving distress calls, but most are incoherent. The crews are experiencing severe psychological trauma. Some are reporting that they were somewhere else for what felt like years, even though only seconds passed in normal space. Admiral, what the hell did the humans do to them? Ziyundar studied the data with his species' analytical mind. They didn't defend with ships. They defended with physics itself. Those structures didn't destroy our forces. They sent them into dimensional exile. Pocket universes, perhaps, or parallel realities. The humans have weaponized the very fabric of spacetime. How is that possible? The tactical officer demanded. That kind of technology would require understanding fundamental forces at a level beyond anything in Council databases. It would require centuries of theoretical development, thousands of years of engineering, resources on a scale that... They had help, Ziyundar interrupted. He pulled up historical records, his fingers flying across controls. 20,000 years ago, the precursors vanished from this galaxy. Ancient species who had transcended physical form, leaving behind ruins and artifacts. The Council studied those ruins for millennia and barely understood a fraction of their technology. But humans have only been in space for 40 years. Unless... He found what he was looking for. A report from 30 years ago, dismissed as unimportant. A human exploration vessel discovering a precursor site on the edge of their territory. The site was catalogued and supposedly sealed. They found a precursor archive, Ziyundar realized. Not ruins. An active archive. And instead of sharing it with the Council, they kept it secret. They've spent 3 decades deciphering precursor technology while pretending to struggle with fusion drives. The implications were staggering. Precursor technology was incomprehensible to most Council species. But humans, with their different cognitive patterns, their history of solving impossible problems, their desperate need for an advantage, they'd succeeded where everyone else had failed. Emergency transmission from human space, the communications officer announced. It's Ambassador Vasquez. Elena's face appeared on the view screen. She looked exactly as composed as she had during the peace talks. Fleet Admiral Zeuner. I assume you've realized by now that attacking us was a mistake. I'm authorized to offer new terms. Withdraw all Council forces from human quarantine zones. Recognize human sovereignty. Agree to non-interference treaties. In exchange, we won't come after your homeworlds. Zeuner felt something he'd never experienced in 300 years of military service. Fear. Pure, existential fear. You're threatening the entire Council? No, Elena corrected. We're establishing boundaries. You came into our space with an armada. You tried to intimidate us into submission. You failed. Now you know the cost of future aggression. Take the lesson, Admiral. Leave us alone. And if we refuse? Elena's expression didn't change. Those structures protecting our colonies? We have more of them. Hundreds more. And they don't have to stay in defensive positions. Would you like to see what happens when we deploy them offensively? The transmission ended. Zeuner sat alone with his thoughts and his 600 surviving ships, surrounded by the void where 9,000 vessels had once been. He thought about his homeworld, his people, the millions of years of Sithri civilization. He thought about Council pride in galactic order and the natural hierarchy of species. Then he thought about those structures, those impossible weapons, and what they could do to everything he loved. He gave the order to withdraw. The withdrawal didn't go smoothly. The Galactic Council fractured along predictable lines. Some species, humiliated and enraged, demanded escalation. Others, terrified and practical, called for immediate peace. The Kryn Empire, its military pride shattered, refused to accept defeat. They would have vengeance regardless of cost. War Marshal Draknor commanded the Kryn retaliation fleet from the super dreadnought Eternal Fury. 3,000 ships, the largest force the Empire had ever assembled. They hadn't informed the Council. This was Kryn business now. Kryn honor. We strike hard and we strike their heart, Draknor announced to his captains via holographic conference. Earth, the human homeworld, their cradle. We bypass their colonies entirely and glass the planet before they can deploy those dimensional weapons. Speed over strategy. Overwhelming firepower over caution. His tactical advisor, a scarred veteran named Kexlar, showed concern. Marshal, intelligence suggests the humans anticipated this exact approach. Every predictive model says they've fortified Sol system with their most advanced defenses. I'm counting on it, Draknor replied. They'll have their dimensional structures there, certainly. But every weapon has a threshold. We hit them with enough ships, enough missiles, enough plasma, and their exotic technology won't matter. We'll overwhelm them with sheer tonnage. The fleet jumped directly to Sol system, emerging from faster-than-light travel at the system's edge. Earth glowed in the distance, that infuriating blue planet that had produced such troublesome creatures. Scanning, the sensor officer reported. Detecting? Marshal, I'm only reading 17 human ships. 17. Not 1,700. 17. Draknor's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. They didn't expect us to move this quickly. They're caught unprepared. All ships battle speed. We finish this now. The Kryn Armada surged forward, 3,000 vessels in a massive wedge formation designed to concentrate firepower on any target. The 17 human ships hung motionless near Earth's orbit, waiting. They're not moving, Kexlar observed. Why aren't they moving? Because they're dead already and don't know it, Draknor growled. Target those ships. Fire everything. The Kryn fleet unleashed devastation. Thousands of missiles streaked through space. Plasma cannons blazed. Particle beams lanced across the void in colors evolution had never prepared biology to perceive. Enough firepower to destroy entire fleets, all focused on 17 targets. The human ships didn't dodge. They didn't deploy shields. They simply waited until the barrage was almost upon them and then they moved. Not in normal space. Through it. The ships phased, their forms becoming translucent, existing partially in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The missiles passed through them as if they were ghosts. The energy weapons struck nothing, their power bleeding off into dimensional rifts that appeared and vanished in microseconds. Then the human ships responded. They didn't fire weapons. They released something else. Small objects, each no larger than a human fist, expelled into space by the thousands. The objects hung motionless for exactly 3 seconds, and then they activated. Each object was a dimensional anchor, a device that locked local spacetime into a specific configuration. The objects spread through the Kryn formation at faster-than-light speeds, phasing through shields and hulls without touching them, positioning themselves with impossible precision. "Marshal," the sensor officer shouted, "those objects are inside our ships. They're in our engine rooms, our weapon systems, our life support." The anchors activated simultaneously. 3,000 Kryn warships found themselves locked in dimensional stasis. Not frozen in time but frozen in space. Unable to move, unable to fire, unable to do anything but drift on their existing momentum. Their crews could move, could think, could scream. But their ships had become nothing more than expensive tombs floating through the void. The 17 human vessels phased back into full normal space. Their hulls shimmered and new weapons ports opened. Not the gravity cannons they'd used at previous battles. Something different. Broadcasting on all Kryn frequencies, came Admiral Chen's voice. "You came to our home. You threatened our cradle. This is what happens when you make that mistake." The human ships fired. Not weapons designed to destroy but weapons designed to terrify. Holographic projectors, but projectors that operated on principles the Kryn had never encountered. They didn't just display images. They induced them directly into biological neural systems, bypassing optics entirely. Every Kryn warrior in the fleet experienced the same vision simultaneously. They saw Earth's history. But not as distant images. As lived experience. They felt what it was like to be human, to evolve on a world where everything wanted to kill you, where survival meant outwitting predators with claws and fangs and venom. They experienced human wars, thousands of years of conflict. The psychological weight of knowing your own species could destroy your entire world at any moment. They felt human determination. Human rage. Human creativity and cruelty and the absolute refusal to submit to anything, ever. The visions lasted 7 minutes. When they ended, 93% of the Kryn crews were catatonic, their minds broken by experiences they'd never evolved to process. The remaining 7% were forever changed, haunted by the understanding of what humanity truly was. War Marshal Draknor sat in his command chair, all 4 arms trembling, tears streaming from his eyes. His pride was gone. His honor was ashes. He understood now. The humans hadn't won through superior technology alone. They'd won because they understood warfare on a level his species never could. The Kryn had evolved on a world where they were always apex predators. They'd never known true fear, true desperation, true existential threat. Humans had lived with those things for millions of years. War wasn't something humans did. It was something they were. "Broadcast surrender," Draknor whispered. "To the entire Empire. Not just this fleet. The Empire. We surrender. We accept human terms. All of them. Whatever they want." Admiral Chen's face appeared on his view screen. "Your ships will be allowed to return home. Unmolested. Tell your government what happened here. Tell the galaxy. Humanity asked to be left alone. We offered peace. You chose war. This is your reward." "What are you?" Draknor asked, his voice broken. "What kind of species are you?" Chen's expression was unreadable. "We're the species that survived Earth. Everything else is just consequence." The Kryn fleet limped home, 3,000 ships crewed by broken warriors carrying a message that would reshape galactic politics. The dominant military power in Council space had been defeated without firing a single shot. Defeated by terror, by understanding, by the simple demonstration of what human evolution had created. Word spread quickly. Species that had voted for war suddenly reconsidered. The Vex Dominion recalled its fleets. The Sithari Collective proposed immediate peace negotiations. Smaller species that had contributed ships to the Council Armada declared neutrality, not wanting humanity's attention focused on them. In the halls of power across the galaxy, leaders asked the same question Draknor had asked. What are these humans? The answer terrified them because it was so simple. Humans were what happened when evolution gave intelligence to a prey species, then made them fight for every moment of survival for millions of years. They were creativity and cruelty in equal measure. They were the universe's accident, the statistical impossibility that had somehow made itself inevitable. And they were done being underestimated. 3 months after the Sol System incident, the Galactic Council reconvened in their chamber between the stars. But this time the atmosphere was different. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a careful wariness that permeated every delegation. Ambassador Elena Vasquez returned, but this time she didn't stand alone at the human podium. Behind her stood Admiral Chen, two other fleet commanders, and Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Earth's leading precursor technology researcher. The human delegation was larger, more formal, more present. High Chancellor Thex Nor had been replaced. The Kryn people had demanded it after their military's catastrophic failures. The new chancellor was Yex Nor, younger and more pragmatic than his predecessor. He looked at the human delegation with something approaching respect, though it clearly pained him. Ambassador Vasquez, he began. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I am authorized to discuss terms of coexistence with humanity. Elena stepped forward. We appreciate the Council's willingness to reconsider its position. Let me be clear about what humanity wants. First, formal recognition of our sovereignty over all systems within 15 light-years of our colonies. Second, immediate cessation of all surveillance operations in human space. Third, establishment of embassies and trade relations on equal terms. And fourth, she paused. Full disclosure of all precursor sites known to the Council. The chamber erupted in protest. Ambassador Lyra raised her hand for silence. That last demand is unreasonable. Precursor sites are heritage resources, protected by galactic law for thousands of years. They belong to all species. No, Dr. Mitchell spoke, her voice cutting through the noise. They belong to whoever can understand them. The Council has had access to precursor technology for millennia and barely managed to reverse engineer basic principles. We found one archive and within 3 decades, we understood what the precursors were trying to teach. Perhaps it's time to let someone with fresh perspective study their legacy. You're dangerous enough already, a Vex delegate bubbled. Giving you access to more precursor knowledge is asking for our own extinction. Admiral Chen stepped forward. His presence commanded attention. You're afraid of us now. That's good. Fear breeds caution and caution prevents war. But understand this, we don't want to conquer you. We don't want your territories or your resources. We want to be left alone to develop as we see fit. Give us that and you'll find humans can be valuable allies. Allies? Thex Nor's replacement asked skeptically. What could you possibly offer us? Elena smiled. Protection. The Council has maintained order through overwhelming force for 10,000 years. But your military doctrine is stagnant, your tactics predictable. You've had no real opposition for so long that you've forgotten how to innovate. We can teach you. Not our most advanced technology but strategies, tactics, ways of thinking that will revolutionize your approach to defense. And in exchange? Lyra asked, her silver face reflecting calculated interest. In exchange you leave us alone. You recognize our sovereignty. You share the locations of precursor sites. And you establish a non-aggression treaty that actually has teeth. Break it and those dimensional weapons we use defensively? They can be deployed anywhere. On any world. At any time. The threat hung in the air, undeniable and terrifying. Yex Nor consulted with his advisors. The conversation took hours. Species huddled in separate groups, debating, arguing, calculating risks and benefits. Finally they reconvened. The Council accepts your terms, Yex Nor announced. With conditions. You will not deploy your dimensional weapons offensively without Council approval. You will limit your expansion to agreed-upon boundaries. And you will submit to regular inspections to ensure compliance. Elena's expression hardened. No inspections. You don't get to monitor us anymore. That's non-negotiable. As for offensive deployment of our weapons, we'll establish a joint review committee, with human and Council representatives. We'll consider your input before taking action, but the final decision remains ours. That's not acceptable. Admiral Chen interrupted. Then there's no deal. We return to our quarantine zones, and you deal with whatever threats arise in this galaxy without our assistance. When the next major crisis emerges, and you'll face it alone with your outdated doctrines and your fractured coalition. Good luck with that. More consultations. More arguments. But the mathematics were undeniable. Humanity held the superior position. Not in numbers, not in territory, but in capability and willingness to use it. Agreed, Yex Nor said finally, his voice heavy with the weight of galactic history shifting. No inspections. Joint Review Committee. But if you abuse this autonomy, if you use your weapons aggressively without cause, the entire galaxy will unite against you. Then let's make sure we never give you cause, Elena replied. The treaty was signed 3 days later. The document was complex, covering hundreds of specific provisions, but its essence was simple. Humanity was now recognized as a sovereign power within the galactic community, with rights and responsibilities equal to any council member. The age of human subjugation had ended before it could truly begin. As the delegations departed, Ambassador Lyra approached Elena privately. "You planned this from the beginning, didn't you?" the Cythery asked. "The entire performance of weakness, the sudden revelation of strength, even the specific timing of your refusal. It was all calculated." Elena didn't deny it. "We studied your history, your psychology, your tactics. We knew you would never accept us as equals if we appeared strong immediately. You needed to try to dominate us first, to fail dramatically, to feel the fear of genuine opposition. Only then would you negotiate honestly. That's remarkably cold-blooded. That's survival. We learned it on Earth and we brought those lessons to the stars. The galaxy is a dangerous place, Ambassador. We're just making sure we can navigate it on our terms." Lyra was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What happens now? What will humanity do with its newfound power?" Elena gazed at the stars visible through the station's massive windows. "We'll grow. We'll explore. We'll study the precursors and hopefully understand what happened to them. And we'll prepare." "For what?" "For whatever made the precursors disappear. They were more advanced than any species in this galaxy, including us. Something drove them away or destroyed them. That something might still be out there. And when it comes back, the galaxy will need every advantage it can get." The implications chilled Lyra to her core. "You think there's a greater threat?" "The precursors left their technology behind like breadcrumbs, like they were hoping someone would find it and use it. Why would they do that unless they knew something was coming? We're not preparing to fight the Council, Ambassador. We're preparing to defend the galaxy. Whether the Council realizes it needs defending or not." 2 years after the treaty, humanity had transformed from isolated newcomer to essential pillar of galactic security. Human advisors worked with Council militaries, revolutionizing their tactics. Human scientists collaborated with alien researchers, unlocking precursor secrets that had remained mysteries for millennia. Human diplomats navigated the complex web of galactic politics with a shrewdness that other species found both impressive and unsettling. But beneath the cooperation, humanity continued its true work, preparing for the threat Elena had warned about. The first sign came from the galactic rim. A Cythery science vessel investigating a nebula suddenly lost contact. When rescue ships arrived, they found the vessel intact but empty, its crew simply gone. Biological traces suggested they'd been there moments before, and then, nothing. 3 more ships vanished over the following months. Different species, different locations, but always the same result. Empty vessels. Missing crews. No evidence of violence or struggle. The Council convened an emergency session. Elena attended, along with Admiral Chen and Dr. Mitchell. The atmosphere was tense. Species that had fought humanity 2 years ago now looked to them for answers. "We believe these disappearances are related to the precursors," Dr. Mitchell announced. She displayed holographic data, complex equations and energy signatures. "We've been studying the precursor archives extensively. They left warnings buried deep in their data. References to something they called the harvesters." "Harvesters?" Yexnor asked. "What do they harvest?" "Consciousness," Mitchell replied. "The precursors achieved a form of technological transcendence. They uploaded their minds to higher dimensional substrates, attempting to escape physical limitations. But something found them there. Something that feeds on complex thought patterns, on sapient minds. The harvesters. The precursors tried to fight, but ultimately had to flee to dimensions beyond the harvesters' reach. They left their technology behind, hoping future species would be better prepared." The chamber fell silent. Every species present understood the implication. An enemy that could feed on consciousness itself, that had driven away the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever known. "Can we fight them?" Ambassador Lyra asked. Admiral Chen stood. "Yes. The precursors fled because they'd already transcended physical form. They had no bodies, no physical weapons. But we do. The harvesters exist partially in our dimension and partially in higher dimensions. The dimensional weapons we developed can target them in ways that conventional weapons cannot." "You knew about this," Thexnor's replacement accused. "That's why you demanded access to precursor sites. You were preparing for this." "We suspected," Elena corrected. "The evidence was there for anyone who looked carefully. But yes, this is why we needed those weapons. This is why we couldn't let the Council restrict our development. The galaxy needs defenders who understand the real threat. So what do we do? The Vex ambassador asked, its gelatinous form pulsing with anxiety. Admiral Chin manipulated the holographic display, showing fleet positions and strategic data. The harvesters are testing our defenses with these isolated attacks. When they understand our capabilities, they'll launch a full invasion. We have perhaps 6 months. In that time, we need to fortify key systems, upgrade the Council's defenses with human-developed weapons, and prepare coordinated response strategies. You want us to trust you with our home defense? A Corvin delegate said. To let human weapons and human advisors into our most secure systems. Yes, Elena said simply. Because the alternative is extinction. The harvesters don't negotiate. They don't take prisoners. They consume sapient minds and leave empty husks behind. Every species in this galaxy is prey to them. Including us. We fight together or we die separately. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, every council species agreed on a course of action. Humanity had done what 10,000 years of tradition couldn't. United the galaxy against a common enemy. The following months were intense. Human engineers worked around the clock, installing dimensional weapons on thousands of council vessels. Human military strategists trained alien officers in tactics designed for this specific threat. Human scientists shared precursor data freely, holding nothing back. When the harvesters finally came, they came in force. Massive entities that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions human eyes couldn't see, they swept into the galaxy like a plague. Their forms were impossible to fully comprehend, geometries that hurt to look at, colors that didn't exist in normal physics. The Battle of the Nexus Point lasted 7 days. 10,000 ships, human and council species fighting side by side, holding the line against an enemy that had destroyed civilizations more advanced than their own. The dimensional weapons worked, tearing through the harvesters' multidimensional forms, but the cost was horrific. 2,000 ships lost. 500,000 lives. But they held. Admiral Chen commanded from the Defiance, humanity's first supercarrier. Around him, his bridge crew worked with mechanical efficiency, coordinating attacks across hundreds of vessels. The harvesters had expected easy prey. Instead, they found a galaxy that refused to submit. All ships concentrated fire on the primary entity, Chen ordered. Target its dimensional anchor points. Don't let it phase away. The combined fleet fired. Human dimensional cannons, council plasma weapons, Sithari energy nets, Vex biological disruptors. Every weapon humanity and the council possessed, used in perfect coordination. The primary harvester entity shuddered, its form destabilizing, parts of it slipping back into higher dimensions while other parts remained trapped in normal space. It's retreating, the tactical officer shouted. All entities are withdrawing. But Chen knew better. He'd studied the precursor data too carefully. They're not retreating. They're adapting. They'll be back with defenses against our weapons. We bought time, but this isn't over. Elena's voice crackled over the communications channel from her position on the council station. Then we use that time. We upgrade our weapons, improve our tactics, find every advantage we can. The precursors ran because they couldn't adapt anymore. We're not them. We still have bodies. We still have the one thing the precursors lost. What's that? Yexnor asked. Stubbornness. The absolute refusal to quit, no matter how impossible the odds. That's what makes humanity apex. Not our technology or our weapons. Our unwillingness to accept extinction. And now we're sharing that trait with the entire galaxy. The harvesters retreated beyond the galactic rim, but their presence remained a constant threat. In response, the galaxy transformed. The Council reorganized into a true federation with humanity as a founding member. Research stations studying precursor technology multiplied. Fleet modernization accelerated. For the first time in recorded history, galactic species weren't competing with each other but working toward a common goal: survival. 10 years after humanity walked away from peace talks, Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the rebuilt council chamber, now officially designated the Federation Assembly. Around her, representatives from 400 species debated policy, shared research, coordinated defense. The change was remarkable. Ambassador Lyra approached, her silver face reflecting the stars beyond the chamber windows. I've been thinking about something you said years ago. About humanity preparing to defend the galaxy whether we wanted defending or not. I remember, Elena replied. You were right. But I don't think you realized something. When you walked away from those peace talks, when you refused to submit, you didn't just save humanity. You saved all of us. If you'd accepted protectorate status, if you'd let us restrict your development, we'd all be gone now. The harvesters would have overwhelmed us. Your refusal to bow, your absolute insistence on sovereignty and development, that was the key to galactic survival. Elena smiled. Don't give us too much credit. We were just protecting ourselves. The galaxy benefiting was a side effect. No, Lyra said firmly. That's human modesty talking. You saw the bigger picture from the beginning. You understood that a galaxy built on dominance and submission was too rigid to adapt, too complacent to face true threats. You forced us to change, to respect sovereignty, to cooperate as equals. You didn't just defend the galaxy. You reformed it. Elena gazed at the assembled species, at the cooperation that would have seemed impossible a decade ago. Maybe. Or maybe we were just lucky. Lucky to find that precursor archive. Lucky to survive long enough to use it. Lucky that the Council didn't destroy us before we could prove our worth. I don't believe in luck anymore, Lyra said. Not after watching humanity. You make your own luck, through preparation and determination and an absolute refusal to accept fate. That's what makes you unique. That's what the galaxy needed. The session convened and Elena returned to her podium. As debates began about resource allocation and defensive strategies, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Humanity had walked away from peace talks because submitting would have meant stagnation, control, the slow erosion of everything that made them human. They'd faced the Council's wrath, their overwhelming numbers, their advanced technology. They'd been underestimated, attacked, threatened with extinction. And through it all, they'd refused to yield. Now, humanity wasn't just surviving in the galaxy. They were shaping it. Their ideas of sovereignty, cooperation, and mutual defense were becoming foundational principles of the new Federation. Their weapons protected species that had once tried to conquer them. Their strategies guided militaries across hundreds of worlds. The harvesters would return. That was inevitable. But when they came, they'd face a galaxy transformed. United not through dominance but through respect. Armed not just with weapons but with the human understanding that survival required adaptation, innovation, and the absolute refusal to quit. Admiral Chen's words from the Battle of Nexus Point had become the Federation's unofficial motto. We don't fight to win. We fight because quitting isn't in our nature. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not their technology or their weapons but their mindset. The understanding that survival was earned through struggle, that peace was maintained through strength, and that the only true defeat was choosing to surrender. The galaxy had tried to make humanity submit. Instead, humanity had remade the galaxy. And when future historians of 100 different species looked back at this era, they would all agree on one thing. The day humanity walked away from peace talks was the day the galaxy's fate changed forever. For better or worse, the age of humanity had begun. And the universe would never be the same.